my calculations are correct, when this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
Hi everyone, welcome to Living La Vita Loca podcast, a retro gaming podcast for some of your retro gaming needs. My name is Fazz, and we are rich poor again this week. Rich is still on holiday in a far-flung land, so I decided I would ask someone sat on the couch beside me, who were renamed. See, you said you were worried about going wrong. I can't even speak, so wants to remain as a silent party almost as much as you possibly can during the most of this podcast. My wife. Hello.
Hi.
So, we decided last year we were going to do a podcast. We did a murder mystery one last time you were on.
Yes, we did. Yeah.
And we spoke on that one. If you haven't heard or listened to that one, about how much you, I said detest video games. Is it?
It's not that.
No, not quite that bad, is it? But yeah, it's not a massive fan though. And so I was like, I was like, I want to have you on again, but what can we do? What can we do that actually, you might enjoy doing, and also that quite a bit about culturally, and what can I do to tag onto that? So I thought Back to the Future, because it's apt because it's the 40th anniversary of the Back to the Future film this year. In fact, it was released in December 1985, and the other day I was sitting there thinking, you were born in the end of August 1986. I was like, could it be conceivable that you were conceived during a showing or after a showing of Back to the...
That's not a nice thing to think about, is it?
Not for you first. Well, what do you mean? Yeah, being born's a good, becoming an entity is a good thing. I was just like, but like timing wise, it's not that bad.
Yeah, okay.
And
I get you.
And considering you have such an affinity for the film and the franchise itself as a whole, I just thought, maybe that could be a thing. That could be why that is the case. You never know. That could be like why that's happened.
Or maybe just they're really good films.
Oh yeah. So, speaking of which, we've been watching the trilogy recently over the last couple of weeks to try and, I guess, well, not necessarily get ready for the podcast, but just almost, watch them again because we love them so much. And I thought we could do a bit of a talk about the trilogy for a bit, and get your sort of thoughts and feelings on it. And then also I have played through the Back to the Future game, which is kind of like the fourth entry into the series. And yeah, because at one point I was like, maybe you'd like to play the game. And then I started playing the game and I thought, no, it's like 10 hours long. And I can't imagine that is something that sells.
I don't have the attention.
No, you don't get the selling point for that. Because I imagine one of the things that you like about Back to the Future is that it's quite snappy.
Yep.
And tells a whole story very easily in about an hour and 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Probably the right time for a film.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we spend a lot of time talking about if it's over 2 hours, then
I won't watch it. There's no point. I'll fall asleep.
It didn't used to be that way, did it? Like, is it? Our lives didn't used to be that way, but now they are. And it's like it's an 8 p.m. sort of, just after 8 p.m. If it's not on the TV by just after 8 p.m.
Yeah.
We're in a bad spot anyway. And Sally looks at the clock whilst thinking about this podcast being over 4 minutes long. And yeah, so I guess with Back to the Future then, we saw, I remember we went to the cinema to see the 25th anniversary re-release.
No way, is that when it was?
Yeah, we went, 15 years ago, we went to the cinema together to see that. So,
wow.
Yeah, just when we were kind of started dating Rick, pretty much, that is in. So, quite interesting to think about that. Like, it's been around that long. But there's some good milestones, you know, like as in, you know, you were probably conceived during it, and then also and in 2010 we started dating and watched it. So, you know, and was our head table at our wedding called Hill Valley? Was it?
No, I think we were sat at Pride Rock.
Pride Rock, that would make way more sense, wouldn't it?
But Hill Valley was one of the tables.
Yeah, we went for a movie themed for the name of the tables, didn't we? And I don't think we can go without calling one of them Hill Valley.
No.
Where does Back to the Future sit in your favourite movies ever, do you think? Don't worry if you can't give it a number, but...
It's right at the top.
Yeah? I think so, for me too.
Yeah.
I haven't budged on this for a little while now. I could probably do a bit of a reappraisal, but I barely watch any movies anymore. But my top 3 are almost Raiders of the Lost Ark, then Back to the Future, then Die Hard. That's my top 3.
Just the first Die Hard?
Yeah.
Right.
Not. I mean, like, well, I wouldn't put all... You can't just go, Die Hard trilogy at the third. We're not going to go... Whoa. We're not doing movie rankings here. This is just like...
Sorry.
But to give you a bit of an idea how, because I was like, that's how we feel about it. Do other people feel that way about it? I know it's like considered it a bit of a classic, but is it actually, if you look at like lists? Where do you think it comes in the IMDb rankings, the top 250 films on IMDb?
Ever?
Yeah, ever.
I bet it's not as high as I think it's going to be. Can you give me an example of where another film lies?
What? What of any of the other films?
Tell me, for example, where Jurassic Park is.
Oh, I don't. Right, okay, that's not in the podcast notes, man.
Okay.
Like, I didn't come in for a. Like...
Come on, where's all the knowledge? Right, let me guess. 40.
That's really close. 30th.
Oh, right.
Which I thought was really good. Like the 30th best film ever made, rated on IMDb, which is like. All the different, and that's user ratings. So that's people like us. We are people. We're human beings. And what about Empire's best 100 of all time?
Well, it's made it in the top 100.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you think about like where it was in the 250 for IMDb, top 100 for Empire magazine.
30.
13th.
Oh, really?
13th, yeah. So yeah, half the number pretty much, and then half the ranking. So yeah, it's up there. Do you know what I mean? Like, it maybe isn't up in everybody's top 3 and stuff, but I was really glad to see it where it was, because I was a bit worried that maybe we just loved it way too much. What is it about Back to the Future that makes you so happy on the inside?
It's just, well, you know me, I don't like anything scary or gory or anything like the Hunger Games that plays on my mind for weeks afterwards about how it's not okay for that to happen.
The fact is, the reference point, the Hunger Games, which is like 20 years old now, and you're like, that's still the scariest thing I've ever seen, the Hunger Games.
No, it wasn't scary. It was just the disturbing factor of it. Anyway, don't want to think about that, 'cause I will literally think about that when I go to bed tonight. So it's just a nice film. It's got the right amount of mild peril in it for me. The soundtrack is very good, very catchy. I mean, Marty McFly is lovely to look at. He's a nice, handsome chap.
Michael J. Fox.
Yeah. And also, I remember watching it with my dad when I was little on like a Saturday afternoon kind of thing, and like that's what I remember about it. So it's just a nice film.
That's the kind of movie it is, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just like, it is like that Saturday afternoon, perfect vibes. Like, you can sit with your family and stuff. You'll have heard Doc at the top of the show. Like, as in, this is probably the movie that I will be happy for our boys to first watch and think they're okay. Listen to that swear word. Do you know what I mean? I'll be like, that's the first swear word that I'm okay with them being listening to, because I need them to watch Back to the Future. They're not quite there yet, though. I've offered them a couple of times, haven't I? And they've just been a bit like, meh. And it's like, oh, you'd love it. Meh. So I don't know what age you first start watching Back to the Future at, but maybe like 10, 12 maybe.
I mean, they won't really watch anything that has real people other than
cartoons. No, what is with that?
Moment, will they?
It's so annoying. I totally agree. Like, I love the pace of the film and how much that almost in the first 15 minutes you learn so much about what Marty's life is about when he kind of goes to Doc Brown's lab and stuff, and then you get a bit of a who's who in Hills Valley already, and everything is associated pretty much around that town square sort of feel. I quite like the idea that of how much it feels like a film set, like is in like, how much you can tell it feels like a film set. It's really weird. That.
Oh, I think I went on a Back to the Future ride when we went to Universal Studios.
Yeah, that's they're Universal
But I think
Studios.
it might have been a bit like a flight simulator thing. I think we crashed through the clock tower at one point.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Is it like I think is it set like you're in the flying DeLorean? Maybe.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? Yeah.
I mean,
we're talking like 20 years, probably more than 20 years ago now.
Yeah. One of my favourite like parts of the movie is when like the DeLorean is revealed out the back of Doc Brown's van, and it comes out, and it's just like all the sort of, you know, the steam and the cold air coming off it and stuff. I think it looks awesome. And then you get a lot of it is like the reveals as well. Like, so when you get into the town square in 1955, and the way they put all the aesthetics together to make it feel like 1955, I think that's brilliant. And I love like the camera work when Marty sees George for the first time in the cafe, and he just does that little look over his shoulder, and he's looking at him, and he like asks him what he's staring at. And then the next scene when Biff comes in, and then like he goes and looks at Biff over his shoulder, and it does that little thing where you can just see his eyebrows and his eyes over his shoulder and stuff, and he does the "what the hell is that" kind of thing. All that stuff feels amazing. And I also love the scripting, like where it's so knowing but so clever. Like, for example, when Vice Principal Strickland says that no McFly has ever amounted to anything in the history of Hill Valley, and then Marty says, "Well, history's going to change." You're like, that's
I've never clocked that before.
Clock tower clocked.
Yeah.
Time travel clocked. Yeah, but little things like that where you just think like. It's funny that you say that because it's one of your favourite movies, but you won't necessarily clock it, but it'll just be sat there, and it's like, you know, that little slogan will just feel so right. And pretty much every single conversation that Doc Brown and Marty have is just telegraphed to an amazing point where it's like nearly everything they say is related to time travel or stuff going wrong. You know, and even I love like Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd in this. They make it so believable that a 18-year-old boy who's 25 in real life, whatever, like is friends with a 75-year-old scientist who is, I think he was 45 when it was filmed. Christopher Lloyd, I mean, he's like 82 now or something like that. So they do an amazing job of making that a believable relationship, really. And we were watching Back to the Future 3 last night, and if you watch them all quite quickly after each other, it is quite touching, the words that are written in the letter from Doc Brown to Marty to say, like, you know, don't come back to 1885 for me. You know, it's been a pleasure knowing you, like, an honour, you're like one of my best friends and stuff. I genuinely was like, get a lump in my throat thinking about that, which just sounds stupid, but it's just like, you do, because
Are you waiting every day for the time that somebody sends you a letter like
No. Yeah.
It could still happen.
I don't have a mad scientist friend, but it's just more...
But maybe you could have in the future.
Yeah, who knows?
Who would then end up in the past, and then you would get the letter without even knowing that you're going to be friends with him.
That'd be so fucking cool. As long as they get a dog called Einstein as well. It sounds stupid, but just because it is so believable and they do such a good job of selling it, that actually that works. It just works so well. And I kind of think about as well how, certainly for this, and you talked about mild peril before, this movie feels like the perfect last 45 minutes of a movie, in so much that when you get to the point of the Enchantment Under the Sea dance and everything's got to be pinpoint timing wise for Marty to be able to get back to the future for the lightning hitting the clock tower, and the little things like you kind of get the fatalistic stuff happening where, you know, Chuck Berry is trying to get Marty out of his trunk of his car, and then he cuts his hand, so then Marty has to play the music at the Enchantment of the Sea dance and stuff. Little things like that where it's so well woven together to get to the point where you are the right amount of stressed, but enjoying yourself as well. And I think that must be the case because you wouldn't entertain anything that was too stressful.
Nah, can't deal with that.
I mean, I guess I've probably seen this movie about 10 times, I reckon. I don't know about you, but like, and every single time.
Oh, you still feel that stress?
Yeah, the good, good stress. It like, even though you know what's going to happen.
You even said to me the other day, it's going to be okay. Whilst we were watching it, I was like, I know.
What do you think? Obviously, we watched Back to the Future 3 last night. What do you think to like 2 and 3? Because 2 at the time was not necessarily critically hated, but like it wasn't as loved as the first one, and a lot of people quite liked 3, but neither of them are as well loved as the first movie. But I don't know. Like, 2 and 3 are filmed back to back, and they came out in 1989, and then literally 6 months later, 3 came out.
I didn't realise that.
Yeah, so it was like, so they kind of like become apart.
Yeah.
I see a lot of people sort of say, oh, it's almost like they all gel together as one story. And I know they do that at the end of the first film where they're like, you've got to come back to the future.
Yeah.
But that felt like a bit like, I feel as though the writers and the director and Steven Spielberg as producer knew fine well they had a banging film on their hands. And they probably did that scene. They were like, should we put this in? Because just in case. And it was like, yeah, no, let's put it in because it's really good. And then they just hoped they were going to get enough money for making a sequel. Whereas the second and third one were like, 5 years later, Marty looks a bit, Michael J. Fox looks a bit older, like he's a bit too old. And then they do loads of...
I think 2's really, they're not as good. The first one is obviously the better one. 2 and 3, I think, are equally as good as each other. I think 2 is very clever. I hadn't seen that for a long time before we watched it the other day, and I've forgotten a lot about it. That it goes back to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance from the first one, and you're almost seeing things from a different angle, and it's just really clever how they did that. Like, and everything's pretty much obviously exactly the same, but you're seeing it from a different angle. And so now that I've seen that one, I want to go back and watch the first one again and see. So, for example, when they're on the stage and he drops those heavy bags on I'm going to call them the bad guys because I can't remember their name. Just like
Biff's Goons.
The one with the 3D glasses.
Yeah.
Like, does that happen in the first one? Do you see that happening in the first one?
No, that's definitely like not the case because, like I say, I don't think they didn't.
I know. I just thought that would have been like a mega clever.
I mean, well, they could. It's been released so many times on DVD and Blu-ray and stuff. You can imagine like they'd done with Star Wars. They could add things in maybe retroactively, but I don't think they need to do that. But what is clever about it is they leave the space for that to happen. That is in. So I think I said at the time when we were watching that, I was like, I don't know if that had necessarily had the time to happen, but it is so intricate. Like, so it's when Marty finds the sports almanac, I think he finds the sports almanac in Strickland's office, and then runs outside to then see Biff being laid out by George, and then he takes the magazine out of his pocket. And then that's like when you were like laughing when the guy's like, I think he stole his wallet. It's just like, that there is amazing that they thought to put that. How do we weave this story in together, and do such an amazing job of it? I think that A, speaks to how good the first one was put together, and you can fit that together, and B, also the fact that with the second one, they do take more time to think about the consequences of time travel and stuff.
Oh yeah, but then it starts getting out. My brain was blown a little bit.
Yeah, it does feel like you can. I think that they do a great job of conveying that idea of how easily. I mean, like if time travel worked like this does with the DeLorean, but like how easy it can unravel. Like, as in, so it all.
Well, I mean, have you ever watched a program about time traveling where everything has gone okay?
No, that's the thing. There's a movie called Safety Not Guaranteed, which is a bit like an indie movie. I can't remember, is that 2010? And that's really, really, really good. And that's like a bit of a more realistic Back to the Future, like almost in a way. And that does a similar sort of thing. But like, it talks about the consequences of time travel. that's the only criticism of the first film, and I don't want to change because you just get that feel good vibe when you come out of it. But the only criticism is from me is that everything works out for Marty, and everything changes in the past for him in a positive way. For his parents becoming richer, and like honestly, you can understand why. Like they won't know about it because it all changed timey-wimey. But the Tannen family are rightly angry at the McFly family after all the things that the McFly family does to the Tannen family in a way, even though they're the villains of the piece. Like he screws them big time.
I've just realised something really stupid. I didn't realise it was called Tannen. So Mad Dog Tannen from the third one. Just realised
I have regrets about this podcast now. Don't you like murder mysteries? Don't you like whodunits? I
realise that now.
Don't you like whodunits?
It's because it wasn't the same actor.
It was the same actor.
Was it?
That's Biff. Yeah, that's Thomas F. Wilson. Yeah.
He didn't look the same.
Oh, because he had a hat on and a fake mustache. Fucking hell. Oh, God.
Okay, I missed that point. Right.
Right.
Makes a bit more sense though.
Anyway, well, it'll hopefully make a bit more sense when I start talking about the Back to the Future the game, which you claimed you weren't going to listen to, but it will help actually, I think now, because it slots a bit more history in somewhere. Because you think, oh, where can it possibly go? But it's a bit. There are things where you kind of go, oh, well, that feels like a bit of a stretch. But I would say that even then, I think how plot holey it could have become, even in the first movie and stuff, they kind of wrap everything up. Like every time something you think, oh, that's a bit of a sort of leap, they do a pretty good job of having Doc Brown just kind of go, oh, this is the reason, oh, this is the reason. Again, though, the amount of times he says, I might have just destroyed the time continuum, or I can't change the time continuum, or I can't fall in love because it'll destroy the time continuum, and then it just happens anyway.
But this is a good thing because time travel, as far as we know, doesn't exist. Therefore, you can just make up the rules, can't you?
Yeah. And the thing is, as well, like it just because he says like the time continuum, continuum would be broken doesn't mean that is necessarily the case. That is just his best guess, and it helps cover that side of things where it's like it gives the exciting idealistic way that the third one finishes, for example, when it's like the future's not written, like go out there and make it on your own. Like, yeah, it is sort of a really cheesy and really saccharine, but at the same time it's kind of true. Like, it's almost like the future isn't written. So, like, as in, it's an important point to make. So, in this day and age, is it so horrible to be hopeful about stuff? Do you know what I mean? Like, and that's what Back to the Future feels like to me. The whole trilogy, it just feels hopeful the whole time.
Yeah.
Hopeful that things can get better and change for the better. Even when things get a bit dark in the start of the second one, when Marty ends up in the alternative 1985, and everything's a bit dark and scary, and Strickland's shooting at those guys with a shotgun, and Biff shooting at him with a pistol. Like, you don't expect that to happen, but they do a good job of pulling that back, but also by saying, don't mess with stuff, because this is what might happen. But I totally would fight anybody that would say that they're not worthy of being.
Physically,
I would physically,
verbally.
I would do both. I think in a ring, covered in grease. If somebody came to me and said that Back to the Future 2 and 3 were bad movies, I think that they are good movies, just not as great as the first one. And I think they did a good job of tying it together. So on that note, I'm going to start talking a little bit about Back to the Future the game. So it was made in 2010, and it is an episodic graphic adventure where you basically do a lot of, I'm going to talk lots of games terms here. It's like a point and click adventure mostly. So what I mean by that is that you move around and you tell Marty where to go, and he'll go somewhere, and a lot of the interactions are either via puzzles or via conversations with non-player characters. So there's not a lot of action in it, and there's not a lot for you to do, and that's why I was thinking, oh, maybe you could do this, because all you need to do is literally move a stick to move your character around, and then every so often press a certain button, either in sequence or just to ask people questions, and then you collect items or solve puzzles to get more items to then move on to the next thing. So it's quite a basic concept. It's by a game developer. They're called Telltale Games, and they've done so this was like kind of their first sort of one where they did a movie tie-in. So Universal Studios had a licensing deal with Telltale Games, and they decided they were going to do basically a quasi sequel to the trilogy. So this is effectively meant to be the fourth story to the trilogy. They've done Walking Dead games, which were well lauded. Game of Thrones games, The Wolf Among Us, which actually got mentioned on the previous podcast that we did together last year as a bit of a whodunit sort of, point and click adventure about fairyland. And they've done Batman ones as well. So and they always get really good reviews. And this was really quite well received. It wasn't I think this is probably their proof of concept though. I don't think it was like the thing that they are the most well known for. That's probably the Walking Dead ones, which you love, zombies and gore and people dying in end of the world apocalypse. The colour has drained from your face, Sally.
Yeah, I know. Well, I've told you what would happen in an apocalypse. I'd want to die straight away because...
Oh, yeah, you become zombie number one, wouldn't you? Patient
useless.
zero.
Yeah, absolutely useless.
The things I'm looking around our house at right now, and I'm thinking, you could throw those soft gonks at people. There's some soft gonks that we've got in it. I always think what my weapon would be. Anyway, we're not on that right now. So the good thing about this is that they brought in Bob Gale, who is the co-creator and co-writer of the movie trilogy.
Well, that's clever.
Yeah, well, it just makes sense, and you can tell in a positive way, like that the story feels like an original Back to the Future story, but within that universe, really well set. They also made sure that they asked Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd if they could use their likenesses. So, it's a fully licensed game, so it looks like Marty and it looks like Doc Brown. And Christopher Lloyd came back to do the voicing. For Michael J. Fox, obviously, at this point, he'd already been diagnosed with Parkinson's. So they brought in somebody called A.J. Loasako, I think who he's called. Luasio. Sorry, butchered your name, dude. Amazing, brilliant voice work. Sounds just like Marty McFly. Sounds just like young Michael J. Fox, and it's really, really good. They actually bring Michael J. Fox in for like a cameo right really late in the game, which is great, and that's really nice that you can hear him again. So,
how do you know that it's him?
Because I read it on the internet.
Oh, right.
But you do know that, as in, so right at the end of the game, there's some future versions of Marty kind of show up, and you can tell that it's kind of got his like voice a little bit more gravelly. So. Like I say, with the gameplay, you are controlling Marty in the third person, so you're behind them, and you're just kind of going around and talking to these non-player characters to try and understand what is happening. So the story is the main draw of the game and the strongest point, really. So it's set about 6 months after the end of Back to the Future 3. I'm still, even though I've played it and also researched it, a little bit hazy about how this kind of happens, because at the end of Back to the Future 3, Doc's happily married with Clara, and his little boys, Jules and Vern. The timing of that in terms of Doc's life cycle seems a bit odd to me, because I kind of feel like he's 75 at that point and still siring children.
Well, that could happen.
Yeah, I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but it's just like, like he's pretty spry, like, isn't he? Are
you sure he's that old?
Yes, because if you look at him in 1955, 30 years earlier, he's like 40, I think, ish in that, maybe, at minimum. Do you know what I mean? Like, as in, it's not as if he's like, he can't have balding hair with the white streaks in it, like, and be like...
When did you go bald?
Yeah, true. That's true. What, like 12? Probably about 12, maybe. Oh, God. I'm Doc Brown. I'm going to be the crazy scientist that someone's going to come to see. But anyway, so there is a bit of a weird patch here where... So Doc Brown's disappeared, which he kind of had anyway, but he's like... the bank is foreclosing his house, and Marty's dad is kind of selling off all his stuff, which is a bit annoying because it's like Marty's dad is just being like George McFly, kind of a sad sap about it. He's sort of saying he's just trying to protect Doc's assets and stuff and things. And then Biff's hanging around being really annoying, and you start off in Doc Brown's house, and you're, as Marty, upset that, you know, this is happening, and then out of nowhere, a DeLorean appears. Now, this is what's weird about that, because the DeLorean, the DeLorean, got destroyed.
By a train,
yeah. But it's explained away a little bit later on by a temporal duplication caused by lightning, basically. So effectively, there's two DeLoreans, like, as in, so this other DeLorean has appeared. Like, when it got struck by lightning, there was another DeLorean. Anywho,
okay,
yeah, I mean, so again, they kind of explain it somehow. It just wasn't absolutely amazing. But this DeLorean shows up with Einstein in it and a tape recording, and the tape recording is from Doc Brown to say that he's in trouble, and not to necessarily come and help, but that's just like, that's why the DeLorean's shown up. Obviously, Marty decides that he's going to go and help Doc Brown. He goes back to 1931. So 1931, 24 years prior to the first movie. So Doc Brown is, and this is why you know that he's old, so he's around, the original Doc Brown even, sorry, so this is where it's going to get confusing, it's called Emmett, obviously, Emmett Brown, and his character is called Emmett, and he is a young budding lawmaker, basically, like, as in, and he's not, doesn't seem to have necessarily, he is interested in science, but he's doing it secretly behind his dad's back in his basement. So if he's like 18 in 1931, which is kind of what it makes out to be age-wise and stuff, then that would make him, you know, kind of 75 when it comes around to the movie. And this is meant to be canon as well, so it's meant to be that this is part of Back to the Future universe. Right, okay. And that would also make sense time-wise anyway. So you are back in 1931 as Marty. You run into young Emmett, and Marty's grandfather is also included in this. Now, in the third movie, you get his great-grandfather is a little baby in that. I can't remember what his name is, but he's referenced in it. So his great-great-grandfather's there, and then his great-great-grandfather's a baby. And then in this one, this is his grandfather that he gets involved with, called William. And Kid Tannen as well. Kid Tannen is the local mobster, 1931 mobster. So you get the next generation of Tannens as well. So who are still being, obviously, a fly in the ointment, you know, a pain in the ass kind of thing. There's also Einstein takes more of a starring role in this, which is good because in the movies he's not really in them. Whereas in this one,
you like dogs.
I do like, and I like Einstein as well. He's got a good coat of fur on him. You know, he's a good looking pup. So he takes a bit of a starring role in this, and also another character introduced who is probably one of the main characters, which is Edna Strickland, who is the sister of Vice Principal Strickland. So not in the movies at all, but in this, and very much a main player in this. So the good thing about that is that it is a fantastic story, and what they do with it, they go somewhere they haven't really been before with the movies. The first episode is a bit samey, if I'm going to be honest. So it goes back to 1931. I'm not going to spoil it off because this will spoil my recommendation, but I do recommend that people go away and play this, especially if you love Back to the Future. But I think that the first episode is a bit slow and a bit samey, and like the movies, and you kind of think, well, what's the point of difference here? And actually, am I going to necessarily continue onwards? But after that, episode 2 gets really exciting. It does kind of contain that same through line of we need to stop the Tannens, that is in almost like, you know, and we need to get back to the future kind of thing. But after that, the third episode takes a real weird twist, and you get an alternative 1985 again, but a different one, and it's almost like a totalitarian future Black Mirror-esque weird 1985, where you get new villains basically that people you know, but that you didn't see coming, and that's really interesting to have that in, and they do a really good way of twisting that round, and that's where the rest of the story kind of follows on from. So it's almost like episode 1 and 2 almost bed you in a little bit and kind of go, oh, you know, here's Back to the Future, kind of the same as you've seen it before, and now we're going to do our own thing and still keep it within the same universe, still keep it as sensible as possible in terms of coming back and forward in time and things. But this definitely, because it's 10 hours long, you get a lot more of the issues of, you can just see it unraveling more and more and more, and you can just see Marty holding onto a string and being like, this is the last bit of string I've got, and if I let go of this string, the whole of the future's screwed and it's going to be in this horrible place. So this would probably be a bit too stressful for you, I think, because almost like not in a horrible way that you'd be like, oh, like this is scary or anything. Like, it's definitely like, the same sort of, I guess, ilk as the rest of the movies. But it just like, but at one point I was like, when are we going to get back to the future and everything be okay? Like, because
I can't see a way out of
this. It did just keep on going worse and worse and worse and worse and worse, and you're like, oh god, like, like when will everything be okay? And it eventually does become okay. I won't lie to you. I'm not going to go, oh, there's some sort of like magic ending where you're like, oh yeah, no.
Was Einstein okay?
A bleak.
Or is that spoilers?
Yeah, no, he is. Yeah, it's fine. No, not really spoilers, to be honest. No, it sounds incredible as well. So what I mean by that is that the voice acting, like I referenced before, is absolutely brilliant. Like, and obviously having Christopher Lloyd there to do the voicing of Doc Brown is really important. But also, like I said, the chap who fills in for Michael J. Fox does a brilliant job of sounding like Marty, and the soundtrack / score through it just sounds just like Back to the Future. I remember I was playing it one time and you heard the Back to the Future sort of little like magical jingle in the background. Then you're like, oh, it sounds like it as well. I was like, yes, it does that. Isn't it? They do a great job of making sure it keeps that continuity of being just like the trilogy, and having that brilliant music in the background. It looks really good. It's filmed. It is. It's been created in a bit of a comic book style. If anybody has played any Telltale games, they'll know exactly what kind of style it is. It looks a bit hand drawn. It looks great the whole way through, and you can't really tell it's from 2010 necessarily. It has a very distinctive style. The only thing that kind of like was annoying was almost that they use Marty's confused face quite a lot. Now, I think that's because I had made Marty, the main character, confused by
you not pressing the right buttons.
Yeah, by pressing the wrong buttons, and that's probably a bit like probably pressing the wrong buttons too many times. So, and there's a hint system as well, which I think you'd really appreciate. Which basically
is that his confused face?
No, that's just a normal face.
Oh, right.
Sally's just showing me a screenshot from the game. That's just his normal face.
Okay.
There is a confused face where he just like kind of has an open jaw and he's like, and they use that constantly. So the hint system's good because you can at any point when you're stuck with a puzzle, just kind of go onto a menu screen and it'll give you 3 stages of a hint, so you can almost make it as easy as possible, to the point where the last hint isn't really a hint, it just tells you what to do, which was quite useful for playing for the podcast, because sometimes I was like, all right, even though there isn't necessarily a level of difficulty to the game, I would say, and this is where I'm going to say this is a negative about the game, that some of the puzzles and the way that you progress the game and progress the story aren't very intuitive. So, for example, in the middle of episode 3, there's a guitar battle you've got to do where you have to move. You're doing like dance moves to impress Jennifer, and against somebody else, and you've got to move around the scenery in a certain fashion before you defeat the person you're doing the guitar battle with. The hint system is next to fucking useless on that part. So then it's like, right, okay, well, if I don't look this up in a guide somewhere, I'll never know how to do this. So if there was no guide around for it at that time, I think I would have really struggled to have known how to finally get around to it. It's like go to the left, then you've got to do this move and move to the. And it was only 2 options. It was like either go left or go right, or with a bit more flair in it, or go up or stand. Do a jump and kick over the amp or whatever and stuff, like like a rock star. But you had to do that in a certain order. And and it took me about 10 goes before I was like, right, I'm just gonna look this up, because I'm not enjoying this now. It's making me annoyed and it's such a simple thing, but if you don't know, you don't know. And there was a few puzzles like that where it didn't really feel like a puzzle. It was almost just like, you'll work it out in the end by doing it enough times, or eventually you're probably just going to have to look it up how you do it. So yeah, I didn't think that's kind of like a gameplay sort of thing where you can see that, yeah, all these good things been saying about it, like that it's definitely recommend that I'd play it, like if I was a fan of Back to the Future, and even if I'm a fan a little bit of the movies, that I'd probably still recommend it for the story, and also that it looks great and sounds great. It's just a bit clumsy, like as in even to control as well. So for example, when you're moving Marty around the town square, because it's all centered around Hill Valley's middle sort of town square, and a few different buildings that you go in and out of during these different time periods, because you go 1931, like 1985, 1931, you kind of hop around a bit. One time you go back to, like, I think it's like, did you go back to 1885 again? You go back like really far in time again. And yeah, you're moving around as Marty, and you kind of, the way that the angle shows you to move down the street sometimes jumps, and you kind of get stuck on the scenery sometimes, or you can't quite walk the right way. It's a bit annoying. And traditional point and click adventures way back when would just be a screen, like something like Escape from Monkey Island. I'm saying, Sally's like smile and nod. These traditional LucasArts ones from the early 90s, where you'd point to your character with a mouse and click and make them move over there, and it would just be against the background and your characters move in front of it. That probably would have worked just as well with this game. I don't know why they kind of had to make it that you had this 3D imagination of moving Marty around the scenery, because the only thing that kind of like has is a couple of little secrets you can find and stuff. But it would have been just as good just to click on a building and walk into that building and just be on to the next scene. So yeah, that wasn't necessarily amazing. And the last thing I'd say was a bit of a negative that I'm thinking about is that the pacing of the game, with it being 10 hours, I feel like it could have been 5 or 6. Like, there's conversations where you just have these conversations and it feels like you could be able to just skip them, and you can't skip them. Like, so normally in a game you could prompt the conversation to go a bit quicker if you've read the text, rather than as quick as the voicing has happened. Then you can click a button and move the text along and then pick whatever choice you want. You can't do that here. So if you accidentally enter into a part of a conversation or a part of questioning that you don't want to go into, or that you've been in by mistake already once before, you can't kind of skip through it. So it just drags it out a bit longer than you want it to be, which, knowing you hate that.
I'd hate that.
You're just like, I want things over and done with as quick as possible. But yeah, just before I go on to what I think about it score-wise, I just wanted to do a couple of asides that I was thinking about the game that also came back to thinking about the trilogy and stuff. Like, Marty, like, honestly, he must fucking stink. He falls asleep in his clothes more than I've seen anybody during the movies, and also...
You don't see him shower ever, do you?
Does he shower in the third one? When I'm sure last night, maybe not. I don't know. At the start of the third one, maybe, when he's come back accidentally to 1955 again. Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, I don't know if he does shower, and he must hum. Like, as in, honestly. And the thing is, in the third movie, he gets dragged through, like, actual, like, horse shit and stuff, and then he just turns up the next scene, he's, like, dusted down absolutely fine. I'm a bit like, come on now. And in the game, he falls asleep loads of times again in his clothes and stuff, and it's just like, those Calvin Klein underpants, they just need a wash, man. Like, I think that this does a good job as well of explaining further why Marty and Doc are friends as well. Like, you kind of start to understand a little bit more. It adds a bit more to it, layers in some more story around that bit that I liked so much about the trilogy, that you kind of get this lovely friend dynamic between them. And they're not scared to lean into Lorraine being a drunk. So, like the start of Back to the Future 2, where she's drunk in Biff's casino. Again, she's a drunk in one of the episodes in this as well. Like, and they're really just like set on that character being an alcoholic. I don't know what it is with it, and I feel like it's just because she has to live with George, because he's so even in the good version of George, he still seems like such a square. Like, as in, like, I wouldn't necessarily be interested. It's the slick back hair, isn't it, that does it? It's the weird greasy hair. But yeah, I think that if I was gonna give this a score out of 10, I'm gonna test this here, because we do this with our free play fortnightly sites. And so if I said, after all I've said to you there about the game, what score out of 10 do you think that I'm going to give it?
Okay, all right. Well, I've also been sat here whilst you were playing it, and you seem to enjoy it. Well, I know like the first time you played it, you said, "Oh, actually, no, I don't think you're going to enjoy this," and then the next time you went, "Oh no, I do. It's better now." So maybe like a 7.
Oh, okay, cool. I said a 6, but like it was a 6/7.
Right.
I ended up so well done. Yeah, okay. That was good. I dropped on a 6. The reason was just because it outstays its welcome a little bit, and it's a little bit too slow paced. And the start is the first episode is a little bit uninspiring, and then you get those puzzles that are a bit unintuitive, like I spoke about. But in general, like the story is so wonderful, and it just sounds so amazing, and the fact it kind of pushes the characters and the stories forward in a different way that I wouldn't expect, and I didn't need this, but I'm glad that I've played it, and I'm glad that I've had it. I don't think necessarily, for example, you need to play it to be like, oh, my Back to the Future experience is more complete. That isn't necessarily the case, but I do feel like I've gained an extra sort of addition of Back to the Future in my life that was on par with maybe the third movie in terms of how good it was and stuff. There's a few things where I do think a lot like you were saying about the second movie. You kind of go, wait a minute, how's this happening here, and how's that? And most of it makes sense when they're not hopping through time and stuff. But towards the end of the fifth one, they go crazy all over the parish, and it's exciting. But it's also like, wait, what the fuck's happening? Like, so yeah, there's a little bit of that. But generally, it felt like a big Back to the Future hug in general. So yeah, I'd definitely say. So we always say 5 out of 10 is anything 5 out of 10 and above is a recommendation. We'd recommend that you play that. Anything underneath, we would say you do not need to play that ever. So, and I think that even to people that aren't necessarily in love with Back to the Future, but it definitely would help. Yeah, 6 out of 10, I think is about right. So, you know, like you said, I started off being a bit like, and then I was like, oh, actually, I am really enjoying myself, and I didn't have to finish it, but I was compelled to by how good the story was. I wanted to know what happened, and I didn't just want to read it about it on the internet either. So yeah, if you've got any closing remarks or anything that about Back to the Future, like do we need to get a Marty McFly in a life-saving jacket poster on our wall, like is in for you to look at, and also for me to look at? Maybe if Einstein's in it, it'd be okay.
I don't really have anything else.
I love when I saw this podcast to you. I was like, it'll just be me talking, and you just sit there and go, and that's fine. That's worked out perfectly okay. A lot of the time that happens between me and Rich. That is, in one of us will just talk for ages, and then it'll be like we'll just be nodding away, like So we'll try and put in, but yeah. Right. Well, I'll leave you with the closing remarks of Biff Tannen. Then, guys, thanks very much for listening. Bye. Bye.
So why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?